Good evening. Welcome to All Outdoors with Muck Simons. Tonight we have a very, very special program. When I say very special, I mean it doesn't get any better than that tonight. With kind of in between hunting seasons and fishing being shut down, shed hunting is becoming so popular in the province. We have a guest here that literally is the pioneer of shed hunting, the I would call the king of shed hunting. He's had uh, an amazing video series called Saskatchewan Trophy bucks that have been out for forever. I grew up watching those videos. We have no other than Bentley Coben here tonight. Bentley, thank you for joining us. This is a very special thing for Darren and I. We wanted you on the show forever. And like I was just saying, shed hunting has become so popular in the province that we had to get it right from the horse's mouth. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and Darren has been a pillar in the Saskatchewan and has put me on the top of the pedestal at Yorkton before. And, you know, with what he does for minor sports, that when he phoned and asked if I would join them, I couldn't say no.
Well, we were flattered to have Bentley and Gary Donald join us a couple of years back, and we actually tricked Bentley and Gary coming to the show, and we had to pry Bentley away from his shed hunting, and some of his clients had come up there, so we had to trick him. I had to get his wife in on it, and Cody Robbins had to help me get him to Yorkton. But we're lucky enough to get Bentley there and honor him, and both him and Gary Donald with a special award. But when we're talking tonight, we're talking about an absolute legend. We're talking to Bentley Coben, so we're very excited to have you on here tonight, and we're going to get our program started here right now. So I guess give us kind of a brief. When did it start, Bentley, for you? When did the passion? Obviously, hunting was a passion of yours, the outdoors, but the shed hunting in particular. When did the shed hunting become a passion of yours?
Well, I was out. I shot a big buck in '84 and won the buck club, and I just went out to visit the area again in the fall, early in the fall, and was walking along, and the first antler I found was an 80-inch 4-point, and this was an 85. You know, and I didn't even look for the other side, and I took my friend Tony Pyatt. We went back out the next year to the spot and picked up a 96-inch non-typical antler in the same spot. Then in '87, my Uncle Murray lived in town here, and we went out on a shed antler hunt looking for shed antlers. And my first match set that I ever found was 180-inch 6x6. And not only did I find one set, I found an antler from him from the year before, and then ran into a gentleman, and he gave me the match to that year before set. And I'm not sure they're behind us on the wall there in the middle, the 6x6 up on the wall, and I mounted them. And I'm not sure that was a good thing, mounting the antlers, because I can't pick them up anymore. And I even screwed holes in them. But you know, my uncle really enjoyed them. We got out, but that feeling, picking those antlers up that day, gave me a warm feeling inside me that lasted for a month. Like, I can't explain it. The high was like nothing, not quite like the one you gave me, but awful close. You made me cry. And, you know, but then in '87, you know, I walked into a bush and I picked up this little 5-pointer. And in the bluff, at one glance, I could spot 26 whitetail sheds from standing in one spot, and this was one of the antlers. And that was with the year that they started the Big Buck Club and turned into the Big Buck magazine with Gary Donald.
Okay.
But when he had a meeting in Saskatoon at a dealership in Saskatoon, and I met Gerhard Stuvey there. And through that antler was the first shed that I found off of the collection, Big Larry. And Big Larry ended up living to 10 years old. And we found, I'm not sure whether on the floor here, can you see them?
Yep, we can.
I'll see maybe if I can get it a little better here. Right there.
So you've got all 10 years of Big Larry?
Yes.
Wow.
And Gerhard Stuvey and I put that collection together, where the biggest one is a 6.93 inch antler. You know, it's Boone and Crockett for 5 years. And I just feel pretty privileged to, you know, and there was a lot of shed hunters out that time. And we were fortunate enough to pick up all the antlers.
That's
Did
amazing.
anybody harvest Big Larry?
Gerhard put his tag on him.
Nice.
Okay.
And the other day I went to Gerhard's. I gave all those antlers to Gerhard. I
Wow.
found 8 of the antlers and Gerhard found 7. And I gave him all my antlers, but the other day Gerhard phoned and said, you better come and get the antlers. You know, he's 86 years old and he's starting to fail a little.
It's a
which
great,
kinda
that's,
makes me a
that,
little sad.
it's a great collection and a great story. And I think more than that is the bond and the relationship that you're able to share with Gerhard. I know when I take out my boys and they're kind of new at it, but they're in their second year and they get pretty excited when they get to go out and they pick a shed. It doesn't matter even what the size it is. They're very excited, and just to share that bond, that moment, that time, that afternoon, that morning is very, very special. So I know what you're kind of saying there, Bentley, but to be able to share that collection is something definitely really special. So, you know, good on you for sharing those antlers, and good on him for returning them to you. And I know that they'll be in safekeeping within your household there. So,
Well, Blake was with me too on the adventures, you know, and now he'll be 42 this year, but he was a little boy when Gerhard picked up there he is
that's
at
awesome.
a little boy, and, you know, to have that. Now Gerhard was, you know, kind of wanted Blake to be a part of it too. You know, and to build that type of a friendship over antlers, and it just hasn't happened with Gerhard. It's happened with Gary Donald, Cody Robbins, Shane Hunter, you know, and since the phone never quit ringing when I had this collection with people wanting to buy the antlers. And so we were outfitters for birds, and my wife says, well, why don't we take the shed hunters? So we had our clients start to come back in 1998, and the same ones are still coming today. We haven't raised our price, and they've really built some good friendships and have people from all over come and share our passion. And they said, you mean you're going to take us to your best spot? And I said, yes, I will. And, you know, we've had a lot of fun and did a lot of cheering when somebody found a nice antler. You know, there's nothing like picking up a big antler.
Well, some of those names you just named, Bentley, you know, the Gary Donalds and the Cody Robbins and obviously Shane Hunter for those that follow Cody's show and Big Buck Magazine. But, you know, a legendary magazine basically started out of the passion of you folks as well, like with Big Buck Magazine and Gary Donald. So it's funny how that all evolved into, you know, your business as a waterfowl guy or bird guy, and then into the shed hunting stuff, and then with Cody with his show, and then with Gary Donald. There's some legendary names in that little brief statement you had there. So that's pretty cool.
Well, it's just really built good, like trusting friendships. When you can take a guy out and you take him to your best spot and share that with him, and he isn't going back the next day by himself. You wait till you're together as a group and you go back out and try and find those matches and share antlers back and forth. I know that my best antler that I picked up, and I've got the series here to show you, but the biggest one was on the 6th year, and mine was 101 inches, and Gary Donald found the match to it, 99 and 6/8, and Gary gave me that shed.
Wow.
His biggest antler that he's ever found.
So just for people that are watching the program that aren't really familiar with what we're talking about, shed hunting, it means searching for deer antlers that naturally fall off, in the late winter, around February, March, in most places. It also helps hunters that are, maybe trying to find bucks or have a certain buck up there. So for those that maybe aren't 100% familiar, that's what it means when we talk about shed hunting. It's looking for antlers that naturally fall off, right, Bentley?
Right. Yes. And they fall off every year.
Right. So, hey, Bentley, just a question on somebody asked me at work when I said I was having you on. They wanted to know, is there any laws or ethics that that people have to kind of adhere to when it comes to shed hunting?
Well, the main thing is permission. That's what I've always promoted is have some ethics, ask the landowner so you feel good when you're out there walking around and nobody's coming out and screaming at you. Even in the government pastures nowadays, go and talk to the pasture manager, even though it's crown land. Like, don't take advantage of that, because on dry conditions like we're having this spring, we used quads when I first started, but for the last 10 years, we've just walked looking for antlers. We haven't used any quads because 2 years ago, there was a big fire at Argo Bush and Bigger, and probably cost quite a few $1 million to fight that fire and put it out. Right. So, and it may have been caused by shed hunters. So all I can do is we go and talk to the landowners, park the vehicle on the road allowance, nobody smokes, and we walk. And we have a good time. And, so there's some ethics. And that's kind of the main concern, is to have permission and try to do it right.
Is there any particular place that you want to start looking for sheds?
What we do is we'll go scouting in the wintertime and see where they're feeding. And this year we didn't look at all in the winter because our snow conditions around here were, that snow was as hard as a rock. It snowed on the 9th of November, and it was right up past your knee. And then it got warm and the snow got hard, and the deer didn't need to be bothered. But where we usually look is in feeding areas. Like in our area, there's creeping juniper, where I've went to Yorkton looking for antlers before, and I noticed there wasn't any creeping juniper on the ground there, but the leaves, and if you get into black poplars, the deer really like the leaves there. Just along the edge of the bush, let's say there's a staging area where the deer come out on the very edge of the bush and stand there and wait to go out into the buckbrush, or like we have snowberry bush or buckbrush around here. And, they feed on that brush in the wintertime quite a bit too. And we find the antlers mostly in the feeding areas. We'll find maybe 10% in the bedding areas, maybe 10% on the trails, and 80% of the antlers in the feeding areas.
Now, is that, sorry, go ahead.
Whether being they're going out into an alfalfa field, or an uncombined grain field, you could pick up quite a few there. You just kind of, from the bedding area, follow the deer trails, and they'll lead you to the feeding areas.
Now, is that for all species, or is that just particular whitetails and mule deer, or do you find that different applications or for different type of species of antlers?
Moose and elk are browsers, and so if we want to find moose antlers, we'll go to where there's some willows, and they'll be feeding on the willow trees. You can have a look along and see where they're picking the ends off the willows, and just see where they're feeding, and that's usually where the sheds are.
Right.
And
Okay.
the elk they're going out into the fields as well. There are bale stacks or farmers' yards, but most of it is what we do is I don't take shed hunters out into a field and walk around out in open fields. We go to big pastures and park the vehicle in the morning and go till your tongue hangs out. And it's having the GPS. When I first started back in the 90s and we didn't have GPSs, I would park on a main road or a long fence line. And so the guys would walk east off the road. Well, they knew that they had to walk west, and they'd come back and hit the road somewhere. And I did lose the odd guy, but I found him.
How many miles would you put on shed hunting in a day or a season?
Well, when I was younger, one guy that I take, his name was Jed Mag, and Jed came from Idaho. And he said, walking on this flat ground's a joke. And Jed walked 33 miles one day, picked up 47 antlers on one walk, 3 over 100 inches. He's a Superman though. Where myself, if I walk 2,200 steps on my phone, that's fairly good for me. I'm 69 years old now, where, when we start walking though, we'll walk 8 hours, and just now I'm walking more where I'll take a few steps, stop, and turn around and look all the way around me. Because I've walked by so many antlers in my day that I can see that I used to think that I found them all. I didn't find any of them. Because it took me a long time to find some matches.
Hey, Bentley, I see there's a massive deer right above your head there. What's the story with that deer?
That's the Milo Hansen. Milo shot that. That's a replica that Milo gave me. And I was fortunate enough to acquire the shed off the Hansen buck. It's 90 and an 1/8. That Dr. Deer said that Milo's deer was 3 years old when he shot it. And James Kroll is Dr. Deer from Texas. And him and I went for lunch one day. And he said that this deer was 3 years old. I said, James, you got to go back to school, get some more common sense. Because I said, that deer is 5 or 6 if it's a day. And anyway, on the shed, it's got 14.6 for G2s. When Milo shoots it, I think it's 13.1 or 13.5 the G2. So it showed signs of regression.
Wow.
But, it got a 6 point. But on the Big Larry collection there, Big Larry had 5-point antlers all the way along. But on its 8th year, it got that 6 point and had its best netting score at 9. So that's why they're aging deer by their teeth wear, where this deer here it was at Johnny Roscoe's field. Johnny Roscoe was hunting with Milo and they were neighbors, and Milo shoots a deer on his own land, but the antler was on Johnny Roscoe's. And John was a good friend of mine and a moose hunting friend from years back. And John says, that deer was eating at my granary, and this grain had been spilling out of this bin, and the second cut alfalfa in the field around there, where I believe this deer's mouth never got any closer than a foot to the ground, where in Texas, there's such soil and sand and that on the plant life there. So the teeth wear would be a way more than this deer here for tooth wear. That I believe that I think I would say that this deer had to at least been 5 or 6 years old.
So Bentley, on that shed that you're holding, G3, was that a broke off time?
Or right there, sticker?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have a look at the rack here, if you can bear with me. And On the rack, you see on the G3, it had the sticker.
Oh, yes.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yep.
And you see the sticker on the brow tine?
Yep.
Okay, that is the right-hand antler. And on the shed, this is the left-hand shed.
I was going to say they look like the opposite side.
Right, it had the sticker on the G3 on the left-hand side, and it had the sticker on the brow tine. You see that?
What is really, wow.
It broke off, but you know, it's just like a mold, that thing, compared to the deer. And try as I might, and I looked hard. And that's the only thing that I told my clients when they came. And I took them out there, but I said, if anybody finds that other side to that antler, they can't take it home. They could put it in the record book that they found it, but they can't take that antler home.
Wow.
And I think it's under the water, because from where the shed was, the deer path went right across 2 sloughs, and I think it lost that antler under the water.
Amazing. Amazing.
But I feel pretty fortunate to have it, and you know, and some of the rest of them, and since then, my friend John Urosco that was with Milo that day, he missed it, and Milo shot it, and you know, he's passed away, but the friendship and memories that we've had, and Milo's came to the house, and I gave Milo a replica of the antler, and Milo gave me the replica that I got on the wall. You know, so it's been a give and take thing. Like even my youngest son, Blake, found his biggest antler that he ever found. He gave it away to our friend Preston, because Preston had the match, you know, and usually the first person that finds the antler, then the other guy gifts the antler to them if they find it. You know, really, when you find the antler and you take somebody there, the person you're taking there, he just happened to have the opportunity to pick that antler up. He really didn't find it. You know, it's not like you took him out and shared your special spot and gave your friend the opportunity to pick up that match, is the way I look at it. You know, and they're giving it to you, but it's not like it's going anywhere. You can come to the house and fondle them and talk about that day and the stories and the pictures.
I'll have to break those rules to my boys.
Is there any special method that guarantees you'll find antlers, Bentley?
The only thing that I guarantee when people come to our place is a clean, warm, dry bed. Diane's cooking, and I'm going to find an antler. I don't know whether you're going to find one or not. You know, there can't be any, if anybody guarantees you anything in hunting, they're just talking. That's all they're doing.
So Bentley, what is your biggest one side find, and what's your biggest match set find?
My biggest find was 126 inches.
Wow.
My brother Maxie picked up the shed from the next year, and Graham Johnson from Milden picked up the match to Maxie's, and we were out filming on the side of the road, and this kid drove by, nice smile on him, and I stopped and said, "What are you looking for?" He said, "Mule deer." I said, "Well, go up the road," and there was this clover that year. That's the same year Cody shot the world record. And anyway, this deer stepped out and he shot it, and netted 268 inches, this deer here.
Wow.
A young lad, Landon Cochran from Birch Hills, was down here and shot that deer. And he was pretty excited and happy.
Yeah, I would say.
And we were happy to share it with him. But that was in the winter time, and on my Facebook page, you can see that antler laying in the snow, and it was quite a sight.
I bet.
And one other day, when the kids were really young.
Oh.
Cody, Shane, Blake, and I were out. And then one day, this one, I'd mounted it and it fell off the mount. So this is the one side of it. And the match, there's the match set. One side's 118 inches. It's got a 216 typical frame with 247 non-typical with 40 inches wide. And the same day, found that set there. And the same day, I picked up the 200 typical whitetail 6x6. And they're over 90 inches a side. So that was a pretty good day, a 247 mule deer and a 200 typical 6x6 whitetail. So that was my cream of the crop.
That's crazy.
And I got 13 antlers off of this whitetail. And the mule deer, I think I got 3 or 4 sets, and Annie Schmidt shot it with the bow and arrow. So, you know, it's just we've been fortunate to live where we live is the thing that, you know, I mean, from where Cody shot the world record double drop time mule deer and where he shot Sleepy is 5 miles from my house. I can look out the window and look at the pasture that Coach shot both those deer.
Right.
You know, and you were fortunate enough to tag along and shoot a jumbo.
Yeah. So when it comes to antlers, Ben, what are some, you know, a lot of people, even my boys will ask me, and I don't really know the answers. So we know you look at the big deer that you just show us the sheds, and you know they've got all sorts of flyers and kickers and all sorts of stuff. That changes from year to year. You just demonstrate that with the Hansen buck. Like, do you find that when you find sheds that one year they're quite different, or do you find that through the genetics of their life they relatively stay the same?
You know, some that they are. This deer here is a beautiful buck, and we called it Hunchback. And it's on my shed hunting movie where we found, and you see the non-typical point on the one side.
Mm-hmm.
And this deer, I think I got, I'll show you the sheds that I have off of this buck. So that's all off of that deer. And
That's
they're
incredible.
fairly close together. They're all really heavy, but it lived until it was 10 years old, but it went downhill pretty bad and you know, shrunk right up.
So hey Ben, using that picture, just hold that picture up again and then show where you would think year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be.
Okay, what it was is year 1's downstairs in the box. So year 1 is down in the box, but right here is about 3 years old, and then it goes up from there. Now this is the first when it was about 3 years old. Then it goes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and
it just gradually starts getting smaller.
Went downhill. This one, where the Big Larry collection got bigger.
Isn't that something?
The bases got smaller. You know, the bases got like right down to small, yet at 10 years old, let's see if I got. No, and where the Big Larry collection started out was that 2-year-old one that I found here, and then went right up, got the 6 point at 8 years old, and its best netting score at 9.
Wow.
You
And
know,
a lot of that has to do with genetics, obviously, but it could be on the winter or the winter it had and the feed, and there's
Right.
a lot of scenarios of, like, water situation and
just how early it greened up in the spring of the year,
right.
and the snow conditions. Like last year, our snow conditions, like I said, were horrible. And I don't think that we had any of that, like through the 90s. And, 93, that's when I picked up the big mule deer and the 200 typical whitetails was in the spring of 93. And that's the year Milo shot the buck. We had some great years in the early 90s here. After 88 was a dry spell. And then from then it got better and better, and our deer were spectacular.
So a question I know that people have when it comes to shed hunting, let's say you find a good one side. Is it typical to find the other side fairly close, or could they be anywhere?
Usually they're within 300 yards, but they could be a mile apart. And this year Brian Argum lives at Park Big, south of Moose Jaw, and it was like 45 days the antler carried the buck, and it was a mature deer carried the other side.
Wow.
That's a long time. Where I had heard before of 9 days, and it could be, yet that deer could come back. It had into its feeding area where it fed and drop that antler right beside the other one 9 days later. And you might have think, oh boy, you shed both of them right together.
Yeah.
It's just where they come back, to a patch of creeping juniper where we find them. I call it creeping cedar, and I think it's just like a fern on the ground. And the Gerhard told me that the protein value in that feed is 21%. And the deer really do well on it. And
You'll find, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just out to lunch, but so for example, we put on the first Saturday of the Easter break that we were out. The boys and I put on 10 miles in some of the most remote elk country in our area. The kids were so pumped. We were up and down hills and through valleys and over. We just put on miles, and I sent Muck some pictures, and it was almost like every corner we thought we were going to be around, we'd find an elk shed. We saw sign and scrapes and all sorts of stuff. We didn't find a shed that entire day. We found 14 whitetail sheds, but we didn't find one elk shed.
You know why?
They don't winter there.
No, they hadn't shed yet. They don't shed. Those elk don't shed until the first week in April.
Really? You mean I have to walk that 10 miles again?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back. It's worth it.
I hate to say that, but that's when we found them. The last few days in March and the first week in April is when we find the elk horns in our area.
Right. Yeah.
Your area could be different.
Well, I wouldn't have a problem going back to look, because it was pretty awesome country. My boys really, really enjoyed it. So, but we looked hard. We found our first elk shed this year. It was a couple years old in the bottom on the edge of a slough, but they were pretty excited about it. But yeah, we put on some mega miles. We didn't find any, so we'll have to go back and check now, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, Bentley, besides the, obviously you're sort of bringing clients in to hunt for them, is there a business to be made, or can you make money out of finding sheds? Like, is this something that if you collected enough of them, you could make money at?
I'm sure that you could. I have never sold an antler. I've still got all my antlers. And but some of the guys at Paradise Hill, there's two brothers, Mike and Chris, and I can't pronounce their last name, but they're getting into this waffling antlers, and they'll put 3 or 4 antlers up, and then they'll have 40 spots at $10 a spot and have a few free spots, and then they spin the wheel and waffle them off. And it seems to be going fairly big. And then there's some sites where they'll have so many days, 2.5 days, and you can bid, and the guy that bids the most can sell them. And shed antlers in Saskatchewan are no more than a stick. They're not a wildlife park. But like deadheads, if you happen to find a deadhead, you can approach the Renewable Resources Officer. And if he feels they can know how that deer died, they may give you a permit for $10.50. But make sure you take pictures when you find it, and then you've got so many days to report it.
But it is legal to sell sheds, like there are people that buy them, correct?
Right.
Right.
There's some people down in the States that pay big money for them, for the cream of the crop, the big ones.
Well, when I was guiding in BC, we would find the odd big moose shed or the big elk shed. And even here in Saskatchewan, when you find a shed, the excitement from the time you see the shed till the time you go pick it up is just unexplainable, isn't it?
Is it ever? Like, that's what I said, that feeling that puts that warm feeling inside your body.
You almost want to kick your friend's feet out from underneath them when you see it, because you're the first one to get to it.
And still I'll be walking along still today, and I'll see an antler, and you look around to see if anybody's going to beat you to it.
Yeah.
And you're the only one there.
That's funny.
And run to the antler still.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna disappear on you. You run to it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, Darren, how are the boys? Do they get to competing over him?
Well, we were out and I was looking at some fencing jobs, but in the meantime, we're stopping at a couple locations. The people I fence for have been, nice enough to let us on and go to look for them. And, with some Ducks Unlimited property and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a competition. They're like two bloodhounds. Like when you release the hounds in the movie, I tried to, and Bentley can correct me if I'm wrong. I try to keep them kind of in a close enough pattern. Number one, so I don't lose them. But number two, so, like you said, they're very easily missed, but you can get kind of twisted and turned on trails. And they got their heads down. They're not watching where they're going, but they try to keep them kind of in a pattern. We're moving kind of, like Bentley said, kind of north-south or east-west, and then come back and kind of comb it. But they get kind of off on a mission. But lots of times it comes down to I saw it first, or I picked it up, or I saw it and you picked it, or it just happened that Nash found a really nice whitetail shed this weekend, and it was kind of like when I was going down this trail, and he kind of cut in front of me, and he just happened to was sitting up against a tree, and he's like, "Dad, look what I found." I was like, "Well, you just walked right in front of me. That's my shed." And no, of course not. He picked it, right? So I was teasing him, but yeah, there's lots of competition amongst the boys, and it's good. And the thing with them is the collection belongs to them, right? It's not, they don't individualize. We don't try to separate the collection. Dad's got most of the sheds this year, but we kind of pool all of our sheds together, and it's our collection. But yeah, it can be pretty competitive. And I sent Sharon a picture. They found their first moose shed, and it led to 3 moose sheds this year. And there wasn't very many smiles in the picture because they were mad at one another because one found one before the other one, and it didn't go over very well. So, but it's friendly competition.
Hey, Bentley, I got a question for you. So, when you guys bring people into shed hunt, are you bringing hunters in, or are they just people that maybe don't even hunt? Are they looking for them?
There's just people that are. I took the editor of National Geographic out, and he was 70 years old when he came, and he lived in Washington, D.C. and picked sheds in the city, and he read a book by Joe Shedd, was the guy's name, and Joe wrote this, came shed hunting with me, and then wrote a book.
Oh, wow.
And talked about it. And so anyway, Roger decided that he wanted to come to Saskatchewan, and he came for quite a few years. And on his last year, his doctor phones him. He's in Minneapolis in the airport, and his doctor phones and said, "Roger, you can't go. Your kidneys are running at 20%. He said, "What a place to die." And he came to our place, and then he went home, and he said that, like, he had to keep coming back every year. And his wife came last year to see where in the heck that he would go that was that much. And, we've had some special people, or a doctor that read a book on shed antler hunting in Scouts from New York City. And he got to be a doctor, and he came for one day, and there was 4 other people all singular guys from Maine and Idaho and all over that meet here every year. But we've had some, like I say, clients that they had nothing to do with hunting. And we have quite a few couples come. And, you know, when the couples come, they were at the first year they came and they're more worried about where the other one is, like you were telling me about your kids.
Yeah.
And they didn't pick any antlers up. And then I got them to come back the next year with a GPS, just a cheap Garmin eTrex. You can buy them on eBay for $40 a used one, and give those kids that GPS and tell them to get lost. So they don't even see you. So nobody sees anybody. And you're walking along and then you're concentrating only on antlers.
Right.
Nothing else. Nothing what's going on at home. And your odds will go up 200%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You get that focus, the attention to it, right?
That's right. Not worrying about where somebody is, and we quit even having the radios and the surprise is when you get back to the vehicle on what the other person had. If you got the radios, you already know what they got when you come back.
Right.
You know, the excitement of watching the person walk back with their antlers. You know, we make it a game, but it's just the odds increased dramatically. Like we were picking, you know, from 500 to 900 sheds a year.
Oh, boy.
The Americans took over 8,000 antlers home from my place. That's a lot of antlers.
That's a lot of antlers.
That's crazy.
Hey, Bentley, tell us about your Treasure in the Bush videos that you put out, or your video.
Treasures in the Buckbrush was the first DVD that I made, and it's about the kids. And you know, we sold $500,000 of that DVD. We're still selling it today, and I produced it in 1995. You know, and I had the kids and my brother Maxie's on it, and we went out just searching for antlers. I filmed the deer, and then picked up the sheds, and then had the Big Larry collection at the end of the movie. But it's a 97-minute DVD that still sells just about every day, 25 years later.
That's amazing.
I had people buy the movies on VHS. The kids wore them out. They reordered the same movie again. And when I come out with it on DVD, they bought the same DVD. You know, some families have bought the same movie 3 times.
Love it.
Yeah.
You know,
What about dogs? Are you getting into dogs and shed hunting?
I've had quite a few labs, and I also had Roger Ziegler came from the States, and Roger brought 10 dogs to our place. He's a dog trainer for shed antlers, and Roger brought 10 dogs, and then we had 2 clients buy those dogs and come to our house with those dogs and found some beautiful antlers. You know, so they were $10,000 dogs.
Wow.
That's what we're selling those shed dogs for.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there, I know we talked just briefly, how do you have a collection when it comes to moose or elk sheds at all, Bentley, or is it mostly mule deer and whitetail sheds?
I've got quite a few moose sheds.
Yeah.
And got a set of 431 elk sheds. And, you know, quite a few elk sheds, not a bunch, but some nice ones. You know, it's quite a sight, a big elkhorn laying on the ground. You know, there's nothing like it. Big 7-pointer laying there. But, you know, and we only picked up whitetail sheds till 1991. And then we started picking up mule deer antlers. But I'm just not sure how many antlers I got. You know, I lost the shed off the Hanson buck for 2 years. I thought somebody stole it, and it was just in the pile, and I couldn't find it. Sometimes they're harder to find in the basement than they were originally.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. So when you're some of these listeners that be, you know, checking out our show, they're just starting to think about getting into shed hunting. Maybe they want to get their kids out there, especially with COVID. A lot of people are getting out to the outdoors. What are some tips? I know you talked about, GPS possibly. What are some tips that you would suggest first time families or first time shed hunters, necessities they should take with them when they're going out, and some just brief tips on, how to get started?
Well, take some extra batteries and a GPS and a compass. Show your kids how to use a compass. Park on a fence line or road allowance and drive up and down the road and show them exactly where they're going before they ever go there.
Right.
Explain that the sun comes up in the east at dinner time is to the south and it goes down in the west, so they know that, like, where they're walking back to, so they can hit the road.
Right.
Or a mark. Plus have the GPS and their compass. And like I said, look on the edge of when you look out, there's, at our place, we got it called snowberries. It's got little berries on the top, just a short little reddish buckbrush type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They really like feeding in that. Like, find out, walk along and look where they're nipping the end of where they're browsing, and like walk along the edge of the bushes. Follow the deer trails too where they're feeding. You can walk into the bedding areas and see where they're bedding too.
Mhm.
But like I said, most of it is try and find out where they're feeding. And then once you pick up one antler, mark that spot, and then start searching all around within 300 yards all the way around is a big area.
Right, for sure.
But walk slow and really concentrate and just think antlers.
Mhm.
And when you're walking along, like, think brown, because those brown antlers laying on the ground, they're invisible. But if you're looking for brown, the white's a gimme. If you're walking along looking for white antlers, you're going to walk by every brown one.
That's right.
And as it is, we still pick up 70% white antlers. But
Have you ever picked up a set that just freshly fell off a deer?
with blood running out of them. And
Really?
patches on the blood patches, in the snow. Yeah,
Really?
many times. My best day was 7 match sets, and 5 of them were side by side, 5 sets one day, and then 2 other sets. I've had some lucky days.
Yeah,
I
would
would
say
say
so
so.
too. What amazes me, Bentley, is I used to have an English social studies teacher at my high school growing up. I love that guy. His name was Mr. Yo, and he was the teacher on the pedestal that I thought he was the greatest. And I remember he would teach about Canada and talking about the prairies and the Rocky Mountains and going into Ontario into some of the landscapes. And what I found amazing about him is he had newspaper clippings about events, and he had taken his family when they were small. He had a huge station wagon, and he had documented all their family trips so he could come back and teach in his classroom. And he would go through give the example of the Canadian Shield, and then all of a sudden he'd pull out his scrapbook, and he had it so organized that he could show you what it looked like in real life because he had it there. You remind me of Mr. Yo because just by the pictures you've got and the horns you've got and the stories, you got them all tagged and you're so organized with everything. How do you keep track of all that stuff? Is it just you're that passionate about it, or it's just because that's the type of person you are?
No, I just, as far as in school, when I went to school, I kind of had ADD.
Okay.
This picking these antlers, I hate to say it, but has improved my thought process or my remembering things.
Cognitive skills, yeah.
I can be out now and pick up an antler and know I've got the other side.
Wow.
Recognition and it's just really helped me concentrate, and and I'm just not sure why, but it's really, and I took out the vice president of Merrill Lynch and the retired vice president from IBM. When they retired, they came to my place looking for antlers.
Oh, wow.
And they found 2 singles, and I said, well, let's go back and find the matches. Like, really, they said we looked. I said, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
And we went back there and looked for the rest of the day, and they found the matches to both of their nice sets, big, close to 170 antlers. And they said, you are the most positive thinking guy that they had ever met. I said, well, that's the only way that you can be successful. It's like my kids, they only think positive, and they had big goals as kids growing up that they were going to be this and they were going to be that. Well, it happened. They made it by thinking positive.
Right.
Don't think negative. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And don't say woe in the mud hole, and just keep on going for the gold. And I used to take Jerry Albright hunting, and everybody in Saskatchewan knows Gerald Albright. And Jerry was a lawyer, and now he's a judge. And I asked Jerry about being successful. And he said, if you try your best every day, you can't help but be a success. So,
Good advice.
well, when you get to rub shoulders with people that I've had the opportunity, whether it's been Cody as a little boy, and his mother bought my DVDs for him for Christmas every year, and he says, I'm going to do that. Well, guess what? He's got the best show. He's got the best show going on the Sportsman channel, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's really good, but just thinking positive and like go for the gold.
Hey, Bentley, what about, I know that they added shed hunting, or not shed hunting, but adding sheds to actual record books. How does that work?
I'll show you. See, it's the North American Shed Hunters Club, and when it first come out, and I got to be on the advisory board, Gary, Donald, and I, and they logoed me as the master shed hunter. And this was, back in the very start. And since then, they've had quite a few additions. And now, it's a pretty good book. And some gentlemen, Matt Beard and Mike, I can't pronounce his last name. It's Chalios, and their friend Shane produced. They bought the book. It's been gone through. It started with Jeff LeBaron was the founder, and then the Miller boys from Wisconsin bought it, and now Matt Beard and his associates, and they're the big antler collectors. They own it now.
So where can somebody get one of those books, Bentley?
By take a phone in Matt Beard, or it's the North American Shed Hunting Club. You can just punch it into their computer.
Yep.
Google it, and it'll come up, and you can look at what all the records are, or you can order a book.
And how are they officially scored? Do you have to have, are they scored B and C, or how are they scored?
Right, B and C with no spread though, just and you can either enter them typical or non-typical, or now they got a new category. It's called cluster, and I scored the world record cluster shed the other day, and it was from Saskatchewan here.
What is cluster like? What do you mean?
Well, it comes right out of the base, like it was a shed that there is only one circumference, and it all comes right out of the base. There's no main beam or nothing, and this thing was 118, or I just forget exactly, but it was a nice shed.
Can you enter into the books as a single shed, or do you have to have a set?
No, you can have single sheds or sets, match sets. For the match set, it's a net. They deduct the indifference from side to side, and it's just a heck of a good record book, and good people like organizing it and looking after it, and and it's like a lot of information in there and a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of really a good book.
So go ahead, Mark.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
So, what happens to the sheds, Bentley, that don't get found? Like these deer drop their antlers every year, and elk and moose and stuff. What happens to these antlers that are never found?
In our area where it's dry, I believe that we found antlers that were 100 years old. When I first started, I had many days where I found 100 antlers in one day. They were laying everywhere. And, they get cracked up after 10 years or so. They start to get fine cracks after 2 years, and then they get right to even kind of chalky. Yet when we go up into the forest, where there's squirrels on the ridges and that, they might get ate up within 2 weeks. Or in some areas, the deer and the elk even eat their own antlers. But in our area, we can find antlers that have laid there for 20 years and they haven't got a mark on them. Just a little bit weathered.
I guess just like a dog chew, like a dog will chew antlers. So they're kind of the same concept, right?
Right. Mice, squirrels, porcupines in some areas, and like I said, everything kind of. I've even seen pictures of cows with sheds, and the cattle are eating them.
Well, I think I think you're right, Darren, about the dogs. I think that's a big thing in some of these pet stores. They're actually buying antlers, and
it's a huge market.
Yeah, they're supposed to be actually safer for dogs than eating other bones that can get stuck in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge market. There's a lot of people that will sell to. Sell online, they'll sell to pet stores. Elk sheds they're very prime. They'll split elk sheds worth quite a bit of money. And then there's other things that they'll sell. They'll sell for desk drawer knobs and chandeliers and everything else. But a lot of pet stores will buy them for dog chews.
Right. I've been fortunate. I get some nice gifts. People come into our place and they brought me different carvings, and there's just, I'm not one. I wouldn't even give my mother one to make buttons out of. I just hate drilling holes there, or in case, because we were always putting collections together. Where I've got many where I showed you some of the serieses. Well, I mean, my garage is full on the walls where I got serieses, and just if you cut one up, then it's gone.
Gone. So I know, Bentley, you got a wide variety of sheds kind of sitting around you there. Did we miss any ones that you brought out tonight that you wanted to share that we missed?
Well, this was the first year I went. I found this beautiful, maybe kind of the first 80-inch antler that I found. It laid out a year, so it's a little bit lighter colored.
Yep.
And then my brother Maxie, for Christmas one year, he gave me a shed off of the same deer. And I've got quite a few sheds off of this buck. And then my friend's boy shot the deer. But it's just these ones right here are. Here's this. Can you see this one here? The little ones?
You just have to back up just a little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, anyway, on the left here, he was like a 2-year-old. And I want to just show you, there's from 2 to 3 on you see how it grew?
Yep.
Hopefully we're on it.
That's quite a few inches.
It is.
Yeah, up to at 3 years old, it grew an 80-inch antler. And then over here, they were over 200 at 4 years old. And then the ones at the back were when it was 5. Back here, it was 202, then it was 215. And I got the 6-year-old ones that Gary gave me the one side. When it was 6, they're 225.
That's amazing.
You know,
So what happens to them when they start going past their prime? What happens to the antlers?
well, then they start to go downhill.
Is that when they start growing lots of like wonky stuff, or?
They could get some non-typical points, or see where that one changed quite a bit, but it always had the sticker point on the right-hand antler. It had a sticker on the G2, and it had that all the way through, but they kind of changed up some. You know, it got double drop times on the 6th year. I have got the photo here. I'll see if I can find it. There it is at 6.
So is it
Yeah.
fair to say that you shouldn't be aging your deer by the antlers then? You should be more by the body, or?
Well, by the body, I guess, and some of the ones that are really big, even boonies that got little, they weigh 90 pounds. So I'm not sure what you could really judge them by, you know, where Big Larry, where you think that as they get older, the bases are going to get bigger. Well, the bases on that deer got smaller as it got older, and yet the antlers exploded. Like at 10 years old, that rack is a 180-inch deer with little wee bases that big around. Like,
Well, even with Milo's deer, that deer is very, very thin. His antlers are very thin and just monstrous. It's crazy.
right. You know, it
Yeah.
really isn't thin though. That's what the Americans used to come here and, you know, oh, Milo's deer is just a little thin deer, but
Yeah.
it's so big and the points are so long on it.
That could be.
Well, it looks thin. Really,
Yes,
it isn't.
Yeah. It dwarfs the beam.
It dwarfs everything everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
I guess so.
you know, they're talk about everybody's looking for the world record. And, you know, oh, we're gonna beat Milo's. I said, well, maybe you better beat the Jordan buck first, because it's 206 and 1/8. And Milo's is 213 and 5/8.
Wow.
You know the difference, where the Jordan buck was shot in 1914 and it's still number 2. You know, where I'm just not sure whether the Hansen buck will ever be beat. It's just too perfect.
Hmm.
You know, there's been a few.
Was there much deduction from? Was it pretty match, or is there much deduction from each side?
Milo's,
Yes.
it grosses, I think, 221, and that's 213 and 5/8. So it might
Okay.
lose 5 or 6 inches,
Right.
7 inches maybe.
Hmm.
But it's, you know, just made for the record book.
Absolutely.
You know, it's got a couple little sticker points there on the rack, but you know, it's just, and they were just good old boys out, 4 of them having fun together, and they were meat hunting, and the school bus driver had seen this deer, and so they out it ran and they shot it. And it's a wonder, if Johnny Roscoe would have shot that deer, he would have taken those horns and cut it up and made it into knife handles. You know, when they discussed it, they said, that deer will never be sold, and if it does, you better cut it in 4 pieces. You know, it was a group effort.
Yeah.
You know, Milo got to shoot it, but there was a couple other guys in the bush pushing, you know, and John and Milo out there, and Milo put a bullet in it, and they're still buddies today, the ones that are alive,
Right.
and still telling the story. And a better person couldn't have shot that deer than Milo Hansen, you know, that took it over and shared it with the rest of the world.
Right.
You know,
Sweetheart of a man.
yeah, and you know,
Yeah.
I mean, he's brought it to your show, and he's the pillar of the community. We love Milo Hansen.
That's cool. Awesome.
You know, been pretty good to have a visit with you guys and, share some of my ideas. I'm not saying that I have the right things. People come to my place and, we're out shed hunting and they'll come back and they'll say, I seen a man track. You know what I tell them? We're not looking for man tracks. We're looking for antlers.
Hey, Ben, have you ever inventoried or counted how many sheds over the years you've collected?
I haven't, no.
What would you say would be a fair estimate?
You want to see the pile?
Yeah, I want to see the pile.
Do ya? I'm not sure how many, I might have 10,000.
Jeez.
Some of the really nice antlers that I found, I haven't seen for 15 years.
Hey, what would you say the surge of shed hunting the last couple of years? Why is it so popular?
Why? Well, it's the same as when you go to the lake. Why is there 250 people standing on the shore fishing? This COVID, a lot of my friends, every one of them, the kids in school, Dad, we want to go shed hunting. Every kid and social media, when I look up my friends and everything, the kids are showing their antlers. And what it is you can go out and it costs you nothing. There's no season, no limit, no cost. All you got to do is have a pair of boots and go till your tongue hangs out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The tick thing, we never used to have a tick here. I had one guy from Michigan, Andy Berkey, came to our place and he brought some ticks in a bottle to show me what they look like because we didn't have any.
Oh, wow.
But, this year we've seen one. But some years, we've had down along the river where when we got back, we'd have 200 ticks on us and we take our clothes off, put them in a plastic bag, change clothes and spray, right in the bag, try and kill them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only deterrent is ticks.
Well, before we let you go, Darren, do you got anything more or anything else for me?
I honestly, I learned at Bentley just kind of, like everybody else has through Big Buck magazine, like you said, Muck, through the video series and stuff. And then when I got to know Cody, he's like, you gotta get to know Bentley and Gary Donald and stuff. And honestly, what you see here tonight and what you have heard here tonight is an absolute genuine man. His wife is a gem as well, and I'm just glad to know you, Bentley, and we're glad that we were able to honor you at this Parkland Outdoor Show. And if we ever get this COVID thing under grips, you're welcome back anytime with us. And I want to bring my boys out to shed hunt with the master at least one time here in the next little while to say they're able to go out with you. But we really appreciate you and what you do, and you've grown this. A simple guy from Saskatchewan has grown this to something that people really enjoy and with family and stuff like that. So just thank you in general, and we're honored to have you on here tonight, just to be part of our little podcast here. So.
Thanks, Muck, and thanks, Darren. You have put me on the top of the pedestal before, and when Darren Wandy phones me and asks, "You want to buy a calendar? Do you want to buy a ticket?" I'm all in.
Yeah. Hey, Bentley, give yourself a plug. How can people get a hold of you? How can they buy your DVDs? How can they interact with you?
Well, if they want to go shed hunting with them.
Yeah, or if they want to, that's exactly right. If they want to shed hunt with you.
What I do is I got a Facebook page. My phone number's there, and we got e-transfer or Visa or MasterCard on the DVDs, and we got 21 DVDs, and we give you good deals, and they can just phone up and look on Facebook or give us a call. I live in Tessier, and our name's in the phone book, and they can get the phone number. Our Big Buck magazine, we've had over 60 ads in Big Buck magazine. And it's a great issue there in Big Buck, and it promotes everything I believe in.
Well, folks,
know.
I've been watching Bentley's videos since I was a kid, and or at least the late 80s and 90s. I honestly believe that you are a pioneer when it come to hunting DVDs. Like, you really were. Like, there wasn't much out there when I started watching your videos. And it's incredible. And like you said, to this day, 20 some years later, people are still buying your DVDs every day.
Yeah, you know, I watched that shed hunting one the other day. I've watched it 100 times, and I plugged it in the other day, and it still, you know, really got me excited watching that movie. You know, people ask for me to make another one, and I said, we can't make another one. Not like that.
Are you still doing videos? Are you still trying to produce videos and stuff?
I'm 6 DVDs behind right now. I got 6 years of footage that I have to put together, you know, and since Christmas, they've been buying all 21 at a time. You know,
Wow.
we've sold a lot of DVDs lately.
What's a set, or how much is a DVD worth, and how much for the set?
Well, they're $24.95 each, but if somebody phones and orders them all, I'll give them to you for $20 each.
Nice.
You know, so they're $420 plus shipping and taxes, but so they're not cheap, but there's 34 hours of watching, and from number 16 to 20, there isn't one scene shuffled, unedited, and no voiceover. So I'm not sure whether that can be, you know, here you'll see the big buck here, the full mount, and the sheds are underneath it. Well, it was on Trophy Buck 17, and I shot that deer. My nephew had my gun. He gave it to me, and I shot that deer at 500 yards, freehand, one shot right through the heart on video. You know, it's a spectacular scene. You know,
Excellent.
There's some good moments, and they're like, you could family entertainment. There isn't one swear word on those movies for 34 hours, and unedited. And what you see is what happened.
Absolutely.
You know, no advertising.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Bentley. Thanks, Darren. If you guys liked our program, go to YouTube and watch it. It'll be on YouTube, of course, on All Outdoors with Muck Simons. Hit the like button. It helps us out. Thank you, Bentley. Couldn't have had a better guest on. I mean, you are a pillar of Saskatchewan when it comes to shed hunting and for hunting in general. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bentley.
Thanks a lot, boys, and have a good night and better hunting season and summer, and just enjoy the outdoors.
Stay healthy.